What if I told you that one of the most persistent, frustrating problems we face today isn't actually what it seems? Welcome to The Explainer, where we take complex realities and break them down into clear, undeniable truths. Today, we're diving into a really groundbreaking blueprint regarding water scarcity. And I'm going to drop a bit of a bombshell hook right here at the start. India's settlement-level water scarcity is not actually a water problem. It is, fundamentally, an accountability problem. Let's just break the fourth wall for a second. I want to ask you directly, when you turn on your tap and nothing comes out, what exactly happens next? Well, you complain, and officials give you an answer. It's always the exact same script, right? They'll tell you, oh, there's no water at the source, or we're having a technical issue, or maybe it's a supply network problem. But we need to bypass all of those excuses and ask a much better, much more direct question. Why is your local tank empty? I mean, just look at the sheer scale of what we've already done. We have poured billions into massive infrastructure projects. We've built colossal dams, we've laid countless miles of pipelines, and we have installed massive industrial motors to push all this water around. And yet, despite all of this heavy engineering, the water simply doesn't reach people consistently. It's kind of like a giant puzzle where we have all the pieces, but we're still suffering from dry taps. This absolutely points to a massive failure of the status quo. So the absolutely crucial point here is that our current system fundamentally fails because of what it actually chooses to measure. Right now, we measure effort. The system essentially rewards officials for saying things like, we pumped the water, or we released the supply. But effort doesn't quench thirst, does it? Instead, we've got to pivot to measuring outcomes. The only metric that actually matters is, was there water in the settlement 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Okay, let's look at the shift in thinking, a completely new paradigm. See, we have to stop making this old promise. Promising 24/7 tap water straight to every individual home is incredibly complex. You're dealing with thousands of kilometers of aging pipes, completely unpredictable pressure changes, and just endless points of failure. Instead, we need to shift to a new, much simpler promise. 24/7 water availability inside the settlement. It's simple, and it's ironclad. By doing this, we immediately change the fundamental question from a really vague, did the supply come today, to a highly specific, why is the settlement tank empty? And that brings us right to rule number 1 of this blueprint. It is an unbreakable law. Every settlement, whether we're talking about a village or an urban ward, must have a water tank that never runs empty. I want to be super clear here. Sometimes filled is not an option. An alternate day supply is completely unacceptable. This new system relies on one absolute truth. The tank always has water. So let's dive into designing the system and exactly how it works. All right, here are the mechanics. Step 1. Every single village and urban ward gets a mandatory buffer tank, specifically sized to hold at least 2 to 3 days worth of water. Step 2. You don't just rely on one pipe. You connect that tank to multiple sources: the river, a local borewell, emergency tankers, or the main grid. Literally whatever works to keep it filled. And step 3, the magic ingredient. You install water level sensors. This gives us live data. There's zero guessing anymore. At any given second, we know definitively if the tank is full or if it's failing. Which brings us to the accountability problem. Essentially, the trap is set. This is where the tank becomes this absolutely brilliant tool of behavioral economics. The rule is incredibly simple. 1. In this new paradigm, each tank is assigned to exactly one engineer and one officer. That is it. We are completely eliminating the system failure excuse. You know, the one where everyone just points fingers at other departments until the public finally gives up? Yeah, not anymore. If the tank is empty, one specific named individual is responsible. Now, what's really fascinating is how we actually use that live sensor data. That immutable, unhackable live data generates a monthly report. It tracks exactly how long the tank stayed full and exactly how many hours it failed. And this report goes directly into the engineer and officer's permanent service record. Think about what this means for a second. It means data, not citizens shouting in the streets, not political protests, decides their career progression. Moving on to the escalation mechanism, tightening the grip. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when the water level actually starts to drop. We introduce these inescapable, time-bound stakes. If the tank drops below its minimum buffer, a countdown starts. For the first 6 hours, it's a local problem for the local engineer to fix. If it stays empty for 24 hours, the system automatically alerts the district level to step in. And if it goes beyond 24 hours, the state government takes over. With this automated escalation protocol, literally nobody in the government hierarchy can ever again use the excuse, oops, we didn't know. So let's look at the ultimate control point, making it visible. You might be wondering, why does this specific setup force such massive systemic improvement across the board? Well, it fundamentally comes down to a visual paradigm shift. Currently, failure is this hidden, abstract concept lost in underground pipelines, complicated release schedules, and bureaucratic red tape. But with the perpetual tank, failure becomes highly visible. An empty tank sitting right there in the middle of the settlement is a massive, measurable, and perfectly recorded monument to failure. You simply can't hide it. And since you literally cannot hide it anymore, we see this massive ripple effect in behavior. Suddenly, supply systems start improving automatically. Pipeline leakages get fixed in record time. Alternate water sources get activated without citizens even having to ask. Why? Simply because absolutely no bureaucrat wants a permanent red mark automatically placed on their monthly service record. The system fixes itself out of pure self-preservation. Which brings us to an incredibly powerful quote from the blueprint. This is not just a water tank. It is a control point, a place where system promises meet ground reality. I mean, that perfectly cements the entire philosophy here. When ground reality is rigorously tracked, and when failure is immediately visible and tied to a specific individual, the system has absolutely no option but to improve. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I've got a challenge for you. The next time you face a water issue, stop asking for water in your tap. Stop getting lost in the weeds of complex piping networks and infrastructure excuses. Start asking this one paradigm-shifting question. Is there water in my settlement tank right now? Because if we can guarantee that the answer to that question is always yes, everything else is going to naturally follow. If you believe that real change starts with this kind of unbreakable systemic accountability, definitely share this explainer. Start the conversation in your own community. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep asking the right questions.